Members, before I give the call to the Honourable Martin Aldridge, we note that this is valedictory speech. Oh, didn't I put the question? Okay. Sorry, it was a procedural motion, not actually putting the address in reply question. So let me put the procedural motions. All those of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary say no. The ayes have it. Before I give the call to the Honourable Martin Aldridge, I do remind the House that this is his valedictory speech and courtesies and conventions of the House apply. The Honourable Martin Aldridge.
Thank you, President. Where does one begin their final speech? It's actually been harder than I thought, and perhaps should have left more time for its preparation. Unlike others, I will not use it to settle scores or attack the members opposite, as appears to have become the custom in final speeches, nor will I use it to define a legacy, as that is for others to assess. It has been nothing but a privilege to serve from the 38th Parliament and for a brief period of time in this 42nd Parliament. As an observer of elections for the best part of 3 decades now, I've seen the determination and commitment of so many to get elected, but a rare few do. I was elected to fill a casual vacancy in the Legislative Council arising from the resignation of the Honourable Mia Davies, and have been re-elected on 3 occasions since. Since announcing my intention to not seek re-election, I've been surprised by how many people have been genuinely surprised by my retirement. The fact is that I very nearly didn't contest the election prior. I'm the type of person that gets a 7-year itch, and now I have a 12-year infected wound. Or in other words, it's time to do something else. I remember my first pre-selections speech telling my party that I did not seek to be a career politician, and I still believe that. At 43 years of age, it is time for the next chapter to be written. If only I knew what that was. If I can be controversial for a moment, I believe that members should be subject to term limits. Whilst we might debate what term limit should apply, it would act as an incentive to make your contribution and then importantly to allow others to make theirs. The benefit of this would be greater in an upper house, where of course we are more vulnerable to our pre-selectors than we are our electors. I'm sure a fact that few members would disagree with. This job is not 3 days per week, 20 weeks of the year. It is more like 6.5 days per week and on call for the other half day. You might get off. The next question I'm asked is, what's next? Well, you'll be okay, you have a pension for life. If only did I have $1 for every person that thinks that, I would genuinely have a pension for life. You don't get to say this until you are leaving or have left, but without any self-interest, the way we support and resource our elected members has to change. The lack of understanding, appreciation and consideration of what constitutes the work of an MP and the uniqueness of this role has barely shifted in my time. We are not a workplace, we are not workers, we have no work-related rights or protections beyond those afforded to us by privilege, which I'll come to later. We often talk about needing more diverse representation in this place, yet our systems and processes change at glacial pace and for the best part are rooted in the last century. Do not mistake the sentiment of my remarks with what has in recent years been called the modernisation agenda. We enjoy for a period of time membership of a unique institution that has existed for 193 years. We are the stewards of the Council and we must also be its protector. That is not to say that change is not needed or at times warranted, but it should always be assessed through a prism of ensuring that it will serve in the place's best interest, in this place's best interest, for the next 2 centuries and beyond, not in the interests of your political party or of the government of the day. There is no better demonstration of this than the unlawful actions taken by the Department of Premier and Cabinet and the Corruption and Crime Commission during the 40th Parliament. These attacks on the Council were ultimately defended in the Supreme Court of Western Australia and the privilege of this place upheld and strongly asserted. Whilst few have a full understanding of that period in time, many paid a heavy toll in defence of the Council. It is not a period in time to celebrate, but one that should not be forgotten either. Put simply, without privilege, We have little to defend ourselves and to ensure that we have the freedom and protection to speak without fear of recourse in the courts or some other place. These are not academic theories, and I hope that the 37 members which will take the oath or affirmation in May will perhaps in time realise this and become the stewards that this council requires for the next 4 years, but also the next 400 years. After all, the oath you take is to faithfully serve the people of Western Australia, not your party room. When I arrived here, President, I was so frustrated by this place. There was and still is more unwritten rules than written ones. So many conventions, which means change is slow and small. But over time, I came to the strong belief that our system of governance, accountability and lawmaking, whilst not perfect, it is tried and tested over centuries and proven to work. It might not always deliver the results that a government may like or in a time frame of its choosing, but that in and of itself is proof that it works. It was, after all, Winston Churchill in 1947 who said, and I quote, "Many forms of government have been tried and will be tried in this world of sin and woe. No one pretends that democracy is perfect or all wise. Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time." I think one of the most difficult legislative reforms achieved in my time was the passage of the Voluntary Assisted Dying Bill of 2019. For those who were genuinely engaged in this bill, it was enormously taxing. However, in the course of the many divisions on this bill, there was a moment when a division was called and the entire chamber moved to the government benches, indicating we were all in universal agreement. Who said we can't agree? I think the result was the division was ultimately cancelled and not recorded. However, we all know who was responsible for this light-hearted moment in one of the most significant legislative reforms we've tackled in recent times. I've always enjoyed the legislation. Numerous amendments presented by me succeeded and many more failed. I even achieved what a rare few have with the passage of a private member's bill through this place, not as an opposition member, but as a member of the government. One of my most bitter disappointments to this day has been the lack of progress to address inequity in protections for firefighters and other first responders. It is something that I spoke of in my first speech. However, my focus more than a decade ago was the cancer risk arising from exposure to harmful substances. The debate today has progressed to the psychological injury that arises from sometimes repeated exposure to trauma and critical incidents. The facts are you're almost twice as likely to have a PTSD diagnosis if you are a first responder than the general population. This has in part been recognised in recent years by affording new presumptive protections, but only for paid firefighters and paramedics. Whilst these are significant and meaningful reforms, recent advocacy on behalf of a constituent faced with medical retirement following a diagnosis after years as a paramedic demonstrates there is much more to be done. The conduct of insurance companies, even after liability is accepted, is shameful and immoral. If government is pursuing the next topic for a Royal Commission inquiry, I would suggest the insurance industry is a good place to start. As I said, these protections were only afforded to employees, not the 30,000 volunteers who do the same job and face the same risks without pay. I'm yet to have someone explain to me why the risk profile is any different on the basis of whether you are paid or not. It is unforgivable that we continue to treat volunteer first responders as second-class citizens, and I hope that this will change in the near future. It must. I hope there will be a champion for these people in the next Parliament, as they need one more than ever. I've had the absolute pleasure of serving the good people of the agricultural region, but also in the 41st Parliament as your Deputy President and Chair of committees. I'd like to thank the presidents that have presided in my time and the acting presidents who have been so accommodating and eager to learn. I have no doubt that you will continue to serve with impartiality, respect and commitment as you have done so over the past 4 years. I want to recognise and thank the members of the National Party for entrusting me to be their representative. I'm always in awe at the dedication and commitment of party members, and I'm sure this is true across politics. I'm not talking about the fly-by-nighters who jump on board when success is close or has been achieved, but the people who carry the legacy and responsibility through thick and thin. A party formed in 1913, more than 100 years ago, has too many of those people to mention. But my admiration goes out to them, and I thank them for their unwavering commitment. To Brendan Grills and Tony Crook, who gave an untested 20-something their first break in politics, it was a pleasure to work with you both. Brendan, as we formed government in 2008, and Tony, as we flew to Canberra, I'm pretty sure wondering what we had done in both instances. Murray Criddle and Grant Woodhams have been long-term supporters. In fact, I don't think I would ever have sought pre-selection and ultimately election without the support of these two giants of our party. I've served under 4 leaders, Brendan Grills, Terry Redmond, Mia Davies and now Shane Love. Each have brought a different style of leadership, but each have been committed to the cause, that is to advance the prospects of regional Western Australians. I particularly want to emphasise the commitment of Mia and Shane as the 36th and 37th leaders of the opposition. The Nats are not known to walk away from a challenge, and you both carried the responsibility with integrity and grace. To my parliamentary colleague, Colin de Grassa, it has been a pleasure to serve with you over the last 8 years, and I wish you well in your next chapter. Jackie Boydell, Colin Holt, Dave Grills, Paul Brown, whom I served with, you have all brought unique talents and qualities which have enriched our team and no doubt at times tested it. Jackie, the way in which you just seem to fly by the seat of your pants and make it work still terrifies me. And Paul Brown, what can I say? I sat next to you for 4 years, thought I'd finally escaped, and now we speak 10 times a day. Your jokes are the worst, and not even parliamentary privilege will save them, but your commitment to politics and doing it differently remain. To Mia, it seems like a distant memory when we joined the Young Nationals all those years ago. In cleaning out my office, I found the letter you wrote to me in 2004, welcoming me to the party as the then Secretary of the Young Nationals. We've had lots of fun along the way, and I've loved being on this journey with you. You're an extraordinary human, and I wish you all the best on Saturday. To the new Nats, elected in Scott, Bevan, Kiralee, Lachlan, Rob and Julie. You all enjoyed victories through hard work, sweat and tears. Success rarely comes without some challenge, and you rose to meet it head on. It is your time to shape the party and policy of the future, and 4 years goes in the blink of an eye, so don't miss it. I want to turn now to recognise the wonderful staff that have served me and my constituents. Along with our talented Hansard reporters, our staff really do make us appear smarter than we actually are. Whilst their hourly rate will always be better than mine, their commitment, loyalty and dedication has been outstanding. To my current crew in the President's Gallery, Ashley, Danelle, Courtney and Alexander, thank you for the service to the agricultural region and to the Parliament. You have done yourselves proud, and I'm sure you will succeed with whatever comes next. To my former staff, Josh, Ayla, Claire, Vanessa, Ashwini, Kale, Lachlan, Lisa, Joe, Jacinta, Andrew, Judy, Joanne, Alison, Louise, Jess, Erin, it's quite a list. And I'm sure many others that I've missed. You've all gone on to great things, and thank you for your time with me. Our staff at times have very difficult jobs on our behalf. We ask a lot, and in my view, too much of our staff. The demands of a representative democracy and elected members is rapidly changing, yet the resourcing of members and their officers have remained stagnant for decades, and by some measures have gone backwards. The challenge for the 37 members of the new council to represent all of Western Australia is simply fanciful, yet that is the expectation that has been established by government. I also want to reflect on the staff here at Parliament House. I am sure working in a building with 95 unconstrained egos is not a walk in the park. There are too many staff to recognise, but if I can make some general comments. First and foremost, to our security service and protective service officers, I've never felt unsafe in Parliament. notwithstanding the significant number and real threats that exist. The hardening of Parliament's security has been very obvious over the past decade as threats increase in frequency and severity. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said outside of the Parliament, where we spend most of the time in our community, in our offices, dealing with a myriad of issues and people. I feel that complacency and a lack of appreciation of mental health challenges and the rise of fixation on public figures will at some point see a member or their staff or family harmed or worse, as we've seen in other jurisdictions. These concerns are not exaggerated, they are real, and I'm not sure we are all that prepared to face them. We have extraordinary staff working in our chamber and in the committee offices, ably led by Sam and Paul. What they don't know is simply not worth knowing. I've enjoyed every minute working with this talented team as we have navigated all sorts of issues over my time. Members may know that I'm a fan of the afternoon tea break, and perhaps the 42nd Parliament will see the wisdom of its return. However, on that note, I want to reflect on the outstanding contribution that our catering team makes to the functioning of our Parliament. From state visits to constituency functions, I think their most important work has been the few minutes of each day whilst we wait for coffee or lunch, where we share a few momentary insights into each other's day and life. Affectionately referred to as chewing the fat, these few moments in the chaos of a sitting day ground you and remind us all that we are colleagues first, and we actually have more in common than what divides us. Whilst I said I would resist naming names, but I must recognise the wonderful Deb, who has served those of us in the council so well for many years, and to the broader team of Roger, Mark, Maria, Steve, Anthony, Leah, David, Jill, Courtney, Anna and many others. To Rob Hunter, the Executive Manager of the Parliamentary Services Department, otherwise known as the Complaints Department for Members, you and your team have served the Parliament to an exceptional standard, and I thank you for your support over my time. So, what will I miss? Well, I might start with what I won't miss. I won't miss the travel. Who in their sane mind believes that living your life out of a suitcase, in a hire car, in a motel room, waiting for the delayed flight or missing baggage at the airport is glamorous? It is not. I will not miss social media. I cannot wait to wind back on the endless number of platforms we're expected to be on these days, but before I do, I look forward to the freedom of telling a few online warriors what I really think of them. I will not miss the abuse and threats, not only of me, but of my staff and at times others. It's interesting how some sections of the public believe you are their property, because don't you know they pay your wages? It is a real shame that an increasing number of people have lost the art of disagreeing respectfully, or the ability to argue their point of view beyond 280 characters. I will not miss the 24/7 nature of the job. We often say the only decent break you get is at Christmas. However, for many, this is when our electorates are most vulnerable to natural disaster, through summer storms, cyclone and bushfire. I will not miss campaigns. Anyone who says they love door knocking is a liar. I've seen more full frontal nudity, dressing gowns in the afternoon, and near misses with rogue dogs to satisfy my risk appetite for the remainder of my natural life. I am done. After Saturday, that is. So what will I miss? I'll miss the people. I often say to school groups and to students, the most rewarding part of this job will never be publicised. You won't read about it in the paper or on the TV. It's the small things that often have a major impact on your constituents. I'll miss the communities. As the last member for the agricultural region, I got elected last president, so I'm claiming the title. The communities of my patch are innovative, proud and resilient. It is sometimes hard to see on the surface, but when adversity is thrown at them, they always rise to the challenge. I've absolutely loved working with them and for them. I will miss budget estimates. I loved a good budget estimates hearing. I truly believe the best first-term committee is the Estimates and Financial Operations Committee. There isn't much that doesn't come back to money, so your terms of reference are virtually limitless. I think I reached the pinnacle of my estimates career when Gareth Parker tweeted, and I quote, "The National's Martin Aldridge is on his feet now asking questions about detail that, to be frank, I don't really understand," end quote. I am a strong believer, President, that even if you have no idea what you're talking about, if you say it with conviction and confidence, most people will never doubt you. I'll miss my colleagues. As I progress to the next chapter of my career as a member of the formidable Former Members Association, I'll miss the camaraderie of you all. They often say, if you want a friend in politics, buy a dog. I don't think that's true. It's often the case that friendship in politics occurs across the aisle more often than people might think. In fact, the ability to trust and depend on members in opposing parties is often more enduring than sometimes in your own. I hope that is the experience of others too, and an important lesson for new members that we are not enemies, and for the most part, we have a lot in common. Now for the hard stuff. You need a strong support network to do this job, and I've been blessed to have the enormous support of my parents, who are in the gallery today, Martin and Roxanne, and Dad's even wearing a tie, which I'm most impressed with, who've always been on standby for kids' sport and after-school activities, sleepovers, dog sitting, whatever we've asked, they've stepped up to the challenge. To Dale's parents, John and Corrie, whilst you might be several hours away, you've always been there for us, especially when Dale and I have embarked on important state visits and fact-finding missions overseas. I still need to remind myself that the Hansard record is literal and doesn't capture humour or sarcasm. To the many friends and families who have offered unwavering support, we cannot thank you enough. One more election on Saturday and I promise not to lean on you again. I also want to recognise the passing of both my grandfathers. Water. Both of my grandfathers and also both of Dale's grandmothers during my service. They were difficult periods for us and our families, and we'll forever be grateful for their contribution in our lives. To Dale, my partner of 20 years, who likes to remind people she met a firefighter and ended up with a politician. I'm not sure exactly what to infer from that, whether it's a good thing or not. Thanks is simply not enough for your patience, your love, and your kindness, at least most of the time. I have some trepidation over what being home 7 days per week might mean, but I can't wait to grow older together. President, I reflected on my first speech over the weekend, and it's not something that I recommend to other members without good cause. However, it reminded me of the reason that now is the right time for me to say goodbye. On the morning of my first speech, Dale informed me that she was expecting our first child. That child is my eldest son, Casper, who joins us in the gallery today. I'm so proud of him and his love for the outdoors, and yes, apparently he does look a little like me. Casper, now 11, is joined by his sister Piper, aged 10, dancer, singer, and pianist extraordinaire. If anyone wants to see a mean handspring, I'm very proud of myself, I googled that this morning, Piper will happily perform in the courtyard in a few moments' time. And lastly, my little man, Dominic, aged 9. Dom is empathetic and caring and has a love for numbers, perhaps a future member of the Estimates Committee. I arrived in this place, President, with no children and leave it with a beautiful and growing family. When people ask me why now, the why is sitting to my left in the President's gallery. It is their time now, it is our time. It's not acceptable anymore for me to justify the demands of this job with, my kids don't know any different because this is all they've ever known. As I'm sure members will attest, even when you do have the luxury of being home, Too often the distractions of work, the media, the committees or the constituents mean your mind and your attention, and at times your frustration is elsewhere. I joke, but it is in part true. I say that I probably have 5 years before my kids hate me, maybe less, and possibly 10 years before they leave, but that probably isn't accurate either in the current environment. Regardless, the next 10 years are critical and will go by in the blink of an eye. There is more to life than Parliament, and I can't wait for the next adventure. To be able to serve has been such a privilege, but to choose the time of your departure is even more rare in this game. When I announced my retirement in this chamber to you, President, 1 year ago, I quoted Winnie the Pooh, who said, "How lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard." President, members, thank you and goodbye.
Good stuff.